stage Dr. Matthew Ellinwood, who had served for many years as a researcher and as a professor at Iowa State University before he came to work with us at the National MPS Society. Of course, he left us and decided that he was going to do other things, but he hasn't gone too far away. And he's going to talk today about the registry. He's going to talk about what newborn screening is and what it means to have data and how it's going to impact our future. So it's a pleasure to welcome Matthew Ellinwood.
Thank you. Is this live? Thank you, Terry. Thank you for the introduction. It is with great excitement I'm here to speak with you today. I always try when I'm speaking at conferences to remember that there may be families for whom this is their first or even second conference. And you may wonder, why is a cat doctor up talking to you today? The MPS models have been known in dogs and cats, and they've helped drive therapy, whether it's loranidase, which is now aldurazyme, or whether it's tralesinidase alpha, which is being put forward by Spruce Bio. We've always been there, and one of the wonderful things about it is that we understand comparative medicine and the comparisons between the syndromes in a very fundamental way, because we understand the comparisons between veterinary patients and human patients. And that is, I think, a really critical lesson that speaks to the mission of the society. We're working for all of the different syndromes. Whoops. How does this move forward? There we go, a quick disclosure slide. So I want to give you today an overview focused for MPS families and provide you some historical background on the registry. I'll go into a little bit more detail than Terry's overview. And I want to discuss the current partnership that we're moving into and outline, most importantly, our vision for what the registry is going to be able to deliver to the patient community, to families, and to individuals. And I hope we'll wrap up quickly enough to have some questions. So the origins of the MPS registry, this really grew out of the development of loranidase, which was started by BioMarin in a partnership with Genzyme. And until recently, it's been actively maintained by Sanofi, who is the inheritor of the Genzyme legacy. And it grew to nearly 1,000 patients in over 150 sites in over 30 different countries. It is really a tremendous resource, maintained for over 2 decades. It had an external clinical advisory board of MPS I clinical researchers to oversee its use and analysis. And without question, it's the largest and oldest MPS patient registry of its kind. So I also want to take a moment to talk about visionaries. We had a visionary award for Sanofi. They really are extraordinary, and I need to emphasize that. When Terry and I were approached with this project, within a year or so after I arrived, Terry took me aside and said, I have to talk to you about something confidential. And it was really the negotiations of handing over this registry. And this was initially managed by the team that managed the registry at Sanofi. And it was something that they had a vision for. They believed that this was really powerful and could really help galvanize progress for the patient community. That is not a rare impulse in pharma, I think. And it really speaks to the culture at Sanofi that empowered their team members to think about a visionary future going forward. And once we finally had nailed down some things of the society, and we went forward with the Sanofi leadership, and we were able, as you saw, to get that project signed off at the last World meeting. So I think that's really important to acknowledge our stakeholders' vision. And I don't want to denigrate the other stakeholders we have here. We are lucky in the MPS Society to have so many pharma companies that really believe in us and have great culture in addition to just Sanofi. I also want to call out the Registry's External Advisory Board, which were the clinician board that really supported this movement of the registry as well. Really, these are visionary approaches. So we started with internal discussions between the Sanofi team and the MPS Society, and the objective was to turn this over and maintain the registry and continue the ongoing research. We believed it would increase use and access of data that would benefit the MPS community. Sometimes you may hear individuals say, well, company is sitting on data and they won't let us have it. That's not quite true in that companies back in the days had very constrained patient consents. They couldn't necessarily share the data because of the way patients were consented. Moving forward, maybe that's not the case now, but certainly there were old-fashioned consents associated with the Sanofi database. So one of the benefits about giving it to us is it could get liberated in terms of how we were able to use that. And that was something that was really important. But from the beginning, Terry and I had ambitions to really expand this, to use this global reach, to use clinical sites that were in Egypt and Pakistan and Brazil, in addition to the common European countries and the United States where we had patients, to really bring global benefit. But we also knew that the MPS Society, we have already a pretty hefty mission, and we are not necessarily a huge group. We needed a partner that understood how to run clinical trial databases. So we began a long process of getting bids, starting with over a dozen companies and soliciting bids, and we ended up having in-person bid defenses for nearly a half dozen. It was a long process, and we fortunately settled on an incredibly good company, Syneos Health. They had vision of what this database could be. They demonstrated flexibility, they had a great team for us to work with, and they were really on board with the mission of what we were trying to accomplish. So we're really excited that they'll be our team members, and once that had been established, we'd found a partner, we were able to move forward with the final negotiations, which, as Terry said, were concluded when we were able to get a signed document dedicating the registry's future to us. But we do have so many questions moving forward. How will the registry be managed and governed? What will be the steps that we take to continue current monitoring and new enrollments? What are the steps to expand the registry to additional syndromes so that we are capturing all the data from all of our syndromes? And is this program sustainable? But most importantly, I want you to come away with an idea of how will this benefit the entire MPS community, including all syndromes. So our vision for governance is that we will have a current registry with an external advisory board, similar to the external advisory board that helped guide research and publications coming out of the registry when it was held at Sanofi. We do need to expand this to make sure we have all of the syndromes represented. And we need to expand this to make sure we have all clinical specialties represented and the entire global footprint of the MPS community also present. We are also going to have to establish an additional smaller board that's going to review proposals to take data from this registry. Do they meet the appropriate ethical and scientific requirements needed to get access to this data? So the structure and the ownership of the registry will also be positioned within the society so that we will not be subject to serious liabilities associated with running this incredible opportunity. So some specific challenges out there. Taking some of the things we've learned from the registry over the last 2 decades. When Genzyme and then Sanofi set up the registry, at least based on the clinicians who've contributed to this registry with whom I've spoken, they've said the registry was maybe a little overambitious. They collected so much data, and sometimes it was difficult for clinicians to keep filling in all that data. So there may be a better, more streamlined approach to what we actually collect as patient observations. Furthermore, and this gets back to the idea that there's a competitive or a comparative medical aspect between the MPSs. We all know that MPS 1 has central nervous system disease and bone disease, connective tissue disease, by which I mean it also includes heart disease, corneal disease, these things. Those types of diseases are represented in all our syndromes. So by tweaking a little bit with the data collection platform we use for MPS 1 and being mindful of the data we'll need for Sanfilippo, CNS disease, retinal disease, or Morquio, or Marteau-Lamy, or SLY, we are already set up to collect this data, and by tweaking slightly the kind of data fields that we collect, we're already set up to expand the syndromes that we'll cover with this. And that's one of the real brilliance elements, fortunately, of this having been a registry that studied MPS 1. So we're really excited about the ability to expand it in that regard. We are also going to need to make sure, in the hopes in the future, that we can expand this registry to incorporate patient-reported outcomes, clinical care-reported outcomes. These are increasingly becoming critical issues that regulators look at and say, yeah, this test may be nice, this 6-minute walk test, but what really matters to patients? What really matters to caregivers? And if we have research that we can point to based on this kind of database, that can help speed approvals. Again, I've already spoken about this issue. Why a multi-syndrome registry? It's just better. It increases our numbers. Instead of looking at one central nervous system affecting group of syndromes like Sanfilippo, we can incorporate data from MPS 1 and MPS 2 in those individuals that have central nervous system effects. This will improve the size of potential clinical studies or natural histories that we can incorporate to help improve not just treatments that treat the root cause, but also help us manage the symptoms of these diseases. And those you can see the list of those shared pathologies. This also speaks to the value of understanding these diseases as heparan sulfate storage diseases. Those are diseases with central nervous system disease, MPS 1, MPS 2, and Sanfilippo syndrome. A couple of years ago, we presented something to the FDA that talked about the value of tracking heparan sulfate across all of these syndromes. We talked about it's occurring in many different animal models, always associated with neurodegeneration. Using these comparative tools gives us so much power. And as was alluded to recently, that approval with Denali, that was based on accelerated approval of the biomarker of heparan sulfate in the CSF. When we work together across syndromes, finding the commonality, we get to answers faster. So, future development and therapeutic development based on this. By reconsenting the existing MPS 1 patients, because they consented to Sanofi, and we take it over, we'll have to reconsent them. We can consent them in a way that allows us to be more progressive about how data is used and data is shared. At the same time, of course, we need to maintain optimal patient privacy, etc. This will allow us to help build the case for expanded approaches to developing the ability to test new therapies. Having an expanded database will do a couple of things for us. As we move forward, anybody who has a therapy, you're in new territory. This is a new, evolving, treated phenotype. By having registry information on these situations, we can start to track what may be issues that patients face at 30 or 40, and we'll have a pretty quick feedback on that data. In some cases, those could be emergent, what we call safety signals. A serious health event maybe even a fatality. We will have a handle on that immediately, or as close to immediately as possible. Whereas in the real world, that may take clinicians coming together at a conference, sharing information, and then maybe 2 or 3 years later, they figure out, well, I saw this again, and then finally we start to address these issues. By being able to monitor the treated community, we'll have a much faster handle on that. We can think about being able to develop new uses for old drugs that address symptomatic therapy. Certainly enzyme replacement therapy and bone marrow transplant have done a great deal to treat our community, but there is still residual disease. There are likely small molecule drugs out there that can help find answers to that. Running clinical trials is very expensive. If we can enroll trials faster, have a diffuse pattern of sites, all of which can be aided by a registry, we can make progress faster. So we often think about the developed world developing the big therapies, transplant, enzyme replacement. I can see a situation where we have a small molecule and we need untreated individuals to test this. So we may be finding that we'll have clinical trials based in Bogota or Karachi or Cairo, and that ends up bringing a therapy that will benefit individuals with Morquio or Martolami or MPS 2. So I think this is going to be potentially galvanizing a global community to help bring benefits in all sorts of different directions for our community. Is this approach sustainable? And that was one of the things that Terry and I talked about from the beginning. How are we going to be able to do this? Unlike some global registries, ours is a clinician-based registry, and it is set up already as a sort of clinical trial-ready framework. I think that's going to be very attractive both as an opportunity and as a data set for other companies, and they will be interested in paying for that. So while we have funding to make this transition, we are very focused on making sure that that transition also builds a fundable or a sustainable stream of funding that is associated with access to this data set, access to these clinical sites, et cetera. So we've done our homework, and we really do believe this will be sustainable. Not only sustainable, I think we think it will build tremendously, and will start to bring benefits for the future for those syndromes that don't have a therapy. The MPS 3As, 3Bs, 3Cs, mucolipidosis 2, et cetera. So I think we've done our homework, we found great partners, and we had an incredible visionary team at Sanofi to help us get there. So I'm incredibly excited about what this registry will do for the future of the MPS community. And I'll tell you what, we have picked up notice from other rare disease communities. I think this is going to be an incredible model. We are so fortunate to have such a large, long-term, comprehensive data set of sites all over the world that we can immediately start to use and develop. There is no other opportunity like this that I know of. And people are noticing what we're doing and what we're going to be able to achieve. So my closing thoughts are just to say how excited I am about this opportunity, how truly revolutionary I think it is both to address all of our patient communities, those that have a therapy, those that don't, and those that are in this country, those who are outside of this country. It's really going to be fantastic. I also want to thank the societies for their vision and our partnerships for their vision as well. And with that, I think we would love to take questions if we have time. Excellent. Any questions out there? I can hardly see anybody. Scott is happy to take Scott Loyler, the current CSO, is happy to take the microphone around. No questions? I must have done too good a job. Do you guys feel like you have a better sense of what the registry means, how we got it, what it can do? Hands up. I'm an old university professor. Oh, there we got some engagement. Okay, good. Yeah, if you don't start asking questions, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask them myself. Excellent. Do we have a question there? No? Oh, they were just raising their hand.
So maybe talk about what the tiered model is going to look like for people requesting access.
Excellent. So we want to make sure that we're equitable in the way we are going to provide access to this data. And there may be different tiers of what people are looking for in terms of data. Are they looking just for market information and they're a big biopharma? You can imagine where we're going to set our price for those individuals, right? Is this an academic group that is doing proof of principle research to try and identify some hypotheses? We're going to set the price point low, even if we have a price for a nonprofit institution. And then we'll also want to have tiers for, is this a biopharma that doesn't have a product yet? They're really needing extra help, right? Because they don't have a funding stream. So definitely we're going to want to tier access to the database in terms of price so that we're encouraging development of better research and better products. I hope that addresses your question, Scott.
Yes.
I just wanted to add on to that. I'm interested to see, will you also market this in a sense? I know that you're a university professor, but there will be other areas besides just industry that may be highly interested in this, and will this be sort of also, sort of given to them as well?
So one of the reasons I think we were excited to work with Syneos Health is that they had a very a progressive and aggressive in a good way idea of how to bring this registry forward and to market it. So we absolutely will be trying to advertise the benefits of use of the registry as widely as we possibly can. That's part of our market plan. Other questions?
How are you planning on accessing internationally, like the third world countries, the countries that don't have access to technology, as far as getting patients and having physicians be aware of the registry?
So some of those sites already exist. One of the largest sites in the current registry is in Karachi. So some of that work is already done in terms of having existent sites. There are probably not all the sites we're going to take over in the registry initially. Some of them have 1, 2, 3 patients. It just doesn't work initially. But many of those overseas sites in the developing world, they're already there. It is a matter of reconsenting them. And this is an industry-based model that we've assumed. Clinicians will be reimbursed for the time, or their staff will be reimbursed for the time putting data in. So that's one of the reasons we think it will yield very high quality data, even from countries that may be resource poor. And those countries may not have access to etiological treatments like ERT, widespread, but they have the potential to be targets for developing small drug therapies where the burden of production and the cost, et cetera, may be much lower. Is that okay? Great. Another question?
Yeah.
Matthew, I wondered if there are thoughts about synergies with the Pathways program and all the data that you collect there?
So absolutely. For those that don't know, we have a program called Pathways, and it's a really an amazing program, first of its kind in rare disease, where we have dedicated now 3 social workers around the country whose job it is to travel to newly diagnosed families and to walk with them in that first year. And we have, I believe, a publication in preparation documenting that program, and that will help us refine the program to start capturing more data. That is also a segue for me to bring up something I had forgotten to discuss. Newborn screening. We are now at a position where 97% of the birth cohort in this country is screened for MPS 1. And we're at around 62% of the birth cohort screened for MPS 2. Our partners, and one of my colleagues in consultancy, is developing a system where all of that data from newborn screening to follow-up to case confirmation to long-term monitoring, that there's a data stream feeding into the CDC on the value of newborn screening and the data from it. And that will be accessible, and we'll try to think creatively of how to bring that data in alignment with what data we may have in the registry. Thank you for that question, Vivian.
Question. Over here, Matthew.
Hey, Matthew, it's Rich. I'm in the back.
Oh, hi, Rich.
You did a great job explaining that. As you know, I'm interested in studying variant effects and doing functional genomics on MPS gene variants, trying to understand genotype-phenotype correlations. When I hear about this, I can't help but think there's going to be a real opportunity to uncover variants from all parts of the world, and this resource should be really useful for someone like me. Do you agree?
Absolutely. So I'm on the VSEP panel that's run by ClinGen for MPS 1 that's headed up by Lauren Clark. And they have published from this data set. But there's probably information that within the current data set that is still yet to be mined. And the collection of future data is also going to be critical. So I firmly believe that that's going to be critical. I think one of our exciting goals is as we expand this to MPS 2, that will teach us very clearly about phenotype-genotype correlation, because there's only one allele to consider. So it's, I think, a very exciting time for those studies in general and for many of our specific syndromes. And I think the registry will help tremendously with that. And thank you for your work in that area. It's also really critical to have that in vivo confirmation. Other questions? I am no longer a current employee of the National MPS Society. I'm sure there is a timeline that has been mapped out there, and Scott may have a better sense of that. I'm not sure. I know that from our work with Syneos, they are chomping at the bit and would like to see things move as quickly as possible. There will be a strategy, what sites, what countries. Each one of those needs to be reconsented. Fortunately, working with Syneos, or working with Sanofi, we have commitment for a lot of the documentation they have already developed in those countries. Institutional frameworks, contracts, translated consents, et cetera. So I'm not sure of the exact timeline, but as soon as final agreements are inked and signed, I think we will move forward as quickly as possible. I think the first step is to get an external advisory board put together and make sure that we've considered what we're going to be doing in terms of data collection, but that can also move independently of signing up new sites and getting individuals reconsented. Certainly within the next year, I hope we're going to be talking about the rollout and where we are, et cetera, in terms of country, sites, patients. I hope I haven't said too much that I didn't know I was. I'm really ignorant in this. I just know the society is committed and Syneos is very committed as well. Other questions?
Okay, thank you, Matthew.
Thank you very much, and enjoy dinner and enjoy the conference. I know it's going to be an exciting one.